Hello, hello, hello. How are you all doing on today? Well, welcome back. We are officially 12 weeks into the SOS 20-week live challenge. And if this is your first time, joining us live, let me tell you quickly why we're here. See, I spent decades in the federal government, managing up to $143 billion in federal contracts, watching businesses win big or fall apart before they ever got started. And the pattern that kept showing up had nothing to do with talent. It was structure, systems, revenue strategy, and readiness. The most capable business owners weren't the ones quietly struggling. They were the ones quietly struggling, not because they couldn't do the work, but because, their business wasn't built to hold the growth they were chasing. So, I got up, I said, okay, let me start doing something about it. And so we started this on April the 8th, going live at 2 p.m., every single Wednesday for 20 weeks straight. One topic, one teaching moment, and one shift per week. And so today is week 12. And so we're going to do what we've always been done. And so before we get into the day's topic, what we want to do is get grounded in what is moving. And I want you to listen to this list because with one question in your head, how much of this are you trying to track and respond to by yourself? Because today's topic, doing too much yourself, is going to land different, once you see how many fronts are open at once. So the first thing, and this one is urgent. If you hold an economically disadvantaged woman-owned small business certification, or EDWOSB, the SBA has already emailed certified forms demanding 3 years of personal and business tax returns through a Survey Monkey link. Now, the email also includes some additional information to include other surveys. So whatever is specified in the email notification, please make sure that you respond because your deadline is 30 June. That's 6 days away from today. And this is happening under 13 CFR 127.203. So if you got the email and you do not respond by June 30th, you risk losing your EDWSB certification. So check your inbox, including spam today. Pull your returns up and upload them through the link that SBA sent you. And keep a copy of your submission confirmation. So do a screenshot or take a photo of it, but keep a copy to show that you actually did submit and you complied on time or before the deadline. And if you did not get the email, but you are an economically disadvantaged woman-owned small business certified woman, if you're certified as an EdWASP, what I want you to do is just log into your account and just verify that you weren't a part of the audit, and that's okay to do. There's nothing wrong just because you didn't get an email. Sometimes we'll say, out of sight, out of mind. No, just verify that you are not part of the audit and document whomever respond to you, the time you talk to someone, and their actual name and office, for your records. Just verify that information because you don't want somebody to come back and say, oh, you should have been a part of it, or you didn't respond when you did not get notification. But that's your due diligence check. Hey, I didn't get a notification. Was it in my spam or anything else? But I did verify in the system, sent in an email asking a question or call someone, and this is the response I got. I downloaded, so that I can capture a moment in time of what transpired. The second thing I want you to do, or the second policy that we're tracking actually, is still the 8A program. According to the industry reporting and legal commentary, tracking the program closely. SBA, y'all, hasn't gave it on approval since August of 2025. So the reporting indicates large numbers of firms have been suspended. More have voluntarily withdrawn, and hundreds of termination notices have been issued or proposed this year. But if you are individually owned and sitting in the 8A queue, you do not have a public timeline for when approvals will actually resume because they have halted, 8A approvals at this time. And the notice of we talked about the notice of proposed rulemaking rewriting the social disadvantage test. For individually owned firms, your comment is due by July 13th. And, we've been tracking this for a little bit. And so the rule does not bind anyone just yet. So until SBA published the final rule, the existing eligibility framework still is in control. But if you want to have your voice heard, please make sure that you provide your comments by the 13th of July. Third, if you are an entity-owned AA firm, tribal, Alaska Native Corporation, Native Hawaiian Organization, or Community Development Corporation, the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment, Michael Duffy, he sent out a letter to Senators Murkowski and Sullivan on the 28th of May, and confirming your participation in the federal program is grounded in political status as Native Americans, not DEI initiatives. And so the SBA NPRM published on the 11th of June that we talked about, it explicitly walls off entity-owned firms in the title of the rule itself. So reforms do not impact entity-owned firms. Entities are ANCs, natives, Hawaiian natives, community development corporations. Again, you are not impacted by this new new policy that's out as it relates to 8A. So large primes can actually continue counting your subcontract towards their small business plan credit. So make sure that you get a copy of that letter and the NPRM title page, and get that information to your primes if you have not done so already. But then again, you also just want to make sure you have a copy of anything that talks about anything that concerns your entity or your business. And we always want to do that. If it's some news or some information about us, our particular business status or type, we want to make sure that we're tracking that information, downloading that information, and responding to the most accurate information, especially when something expressly put in black and white that we are otherwise not impacted or don't affect us. We want to have that in black and white so we're able to show that information to someone that may not be aware of that. And that does happen. And so they are going to need that information, they being your large primes. This is something that they're going to need for the compliance files. And of course, you all know with everything flowing down to every tier, every level now as it relates to compliance and making sure that, DEI policies and all of that is not in place in your organization. You want to just make sure you have anything, all requisite information that you need to have on file. You want to make sure that you have it. The fourth thing that we're tracking is that if you hold a multiple award contract, the re-representation rule under FAR 52219-28 is biting real hard, y'all. Every order set aside under a MAC now triggers re-representation. So if you have grown out of your size or social economic category, you can actually lose eligibility on individual orders without losing the underlying contract, if all of that makes sense. So audit your SAM.gov representations, your NATEs, do it NATEs by NATEs before your next order a call, because you want to make sure that you are still compliant at the order level in the event a request, you see a request for quote or something comes out for your particular product and or item. So just go make sure NATEs by NATEs, you're still compliant and have not outgrown the size standard as it relates to your particular NATEs code. Fifth thing that we're tracking, mid-year individual subcontracting reports. The deadline was moved from June 14th to July 14th because GSA had to fix the subcontracting plan reporting system. So the system alert on the SAM.gov confirms the issues were resolved June 10th. So if you missed the June window, you are still inside this extended deadline. So I want you to file now. You have until July 14th to file your ISR report. The sixth thing that we're tracking is the Maven decision. The Court of Federal Claims reinstated a woman-owned small business set-aside the Army had unlawfully canceled, but the protester could not recover proposal preparation costs. Even after winning, the court applied the RMNA test and required a clear direct line between the specific error and the specific proposal work that became a wasted expense. So what the key point being made right here is plan your protest litigation as sunk costs, not as recoverable costs. Don't assume that, hey, if I win, I could get my money. No, plan your protest litigation as sunk costs, not recoverable costs, because the bar is not higher. So just be mindful of that. The seventh thing, for mentor protege joint ventures, we talked about this last week as well. The primary healthcare decision is out of the federal claims courts. They say your SBA approved MPA, your mentor protege agreement. It must stay valid through final proposal revisions, not just initial offer. So the snapshot in time rule does not protect you. So go, please, if you have a joint venture or mentor protege joint venture, go check your MPA agreement expiration dates against every active solicitation and do it right now. Because what you want to do is, if there's active solicitations and there's a high probability that your JV will submit final revisions after the MPA expires, you want to go ahead and find that extension request with the SBA today. So you want to make sure that you continue to have an active agreement. And the last thing that we're going to look at is the revolutionary for our overhaul. It has moved into formal rulemaking. So the first batch of 4 proposed rules was published on yesterday, covering about 13 FAR parts and more than 1,000 pages. Comments are due July the 23rd. That is 29 days from today. This is the most significant rewrite of the federal acquisition regulation in generation. So if you contract with the federal government, the rules you operate under are being rewritten or have been rewritten in real time. So pull the proposed rules from the Federal Register, read the parts that touch your work, whether it's small business set aside, subcontracting, source selection, the contract, types, and file a comment by July 23rd. Again, your voice during the comment period is the only voice you get before these rules take effect. So please let them hear what it is that you have to say. And even if they don't adopt, your voice or adopt your recommendation, at least you got heard. And that's what we want to be. We want to be heard. We want to be seen. And so we want to make sure that our voice is captured. So drop a number in the chat, because as you can see, that's a lot of things that are happening, for around us in this government contracting space. So drop 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 8 for which of those policy items is hitting your business hardest right now. And if there's more than one that applies, drop them all, because I just want to see what's happening inside of the room. Now, I want you to look at that list again. So that was 8 items, 8 deadlines, 8 separate work streams that need attention this month. And there is, and here's my question, for you today. Who in your business is owning each of those? Now, if the answer is I am for all 8, that is exactly what we're going to be talking about. Because if you're still doing everything yourself in week 26 of 2026 and you've been in business for a while, the policy environment is going to break you before your competitors do. That's just real talk. So, and the real problem is you are doing too much yourself. And again, y'all, I'm telling you all, just like preachers and ministers, I'm preaching to myself, I'm singing to myself. I am the choir, the chorus, I'm doing lead, background, I'm doing it all the parts. I got harmony in lock, right? So, but I see it every week in this community. Owners who built their business from nothing, who personally know every client, every proposal, every deliverable, every contract clause, every certification deadline, and who genuinely believe that no one else can do it the way they would. And here's the thing, they might be right today, but about this one task, but that is not a business. That is a job you invented for yourself, and jobs do not scale. So what I just walked through in the policy post is the proof. The EWSB audit has a 6-day deadline. The 8A notice proposal rulemaking comment is due due in 19 days, actually. The mid-year ISR is due in 20 days. The FAR overhaul comments are due in 29 days. The FAR 52-222-90 modifications are coming at an end in July. I think it's July the 24th. FARC rule comments closed less than 3 weeks ago. Maven and primary healthcare just changed how protests and JVs work. So you cannot read all of this, interpret all of this, file all of this, audit all of this, and still run proposals, deliver work, and grow your firm. The math, it actually just don't work. And if you are trying to do it anyway, What is actually happening is that one of those balls is on the floor right now, and you do not know which one. And that is not a sustainability problem. That is a survival problem in this environment. So today I want to talk about 3 practical reframes or perspectives, whichever word you want to throw in there, that we can start thinking about, that is going to help us start with letting go without us losing control. Because I think that what happens with a lot of us, I know, again, I'm testifying to myself, and it's what I am learning, have learned, and things I had to do myself. It's like, I'm not losing if I let go. There are things that I don't need to touch, things that I don't need to do, and I need to be mindful of that. So this is what we need to think about with and let go, and we won't lose control. So we can let go without losing control. And I think that's the main thing I want us to be mindful of. First thing is, doing too much yourself, it actually has a signature. So let me describe the signature, because most owners, do not see themselves in it until they are deep in the wrong side of it. So you answer every email, you sit on every call, you write every proposal section, you sign every check, you read every clause, you file every report, you track every deadline, you take every meeting, and as the business grows, the workload grows linearly with the revenue, because you are still the one doing all of it. Sounds familiar? That is the signature. Revenue up, workload up, capacity flat. In a normal year, that is just exhausting. In a year like 2026, with the regulatory floor shifting every week, it is dangerous, because the things you have to know to operate compliantly are multiplying faster than you have bandwidth. Think about that. That's the signature. The second thing, delegation is not the same as hiring. Most owners hear, "Oh, stop doing too much yourself," and think the answer is to hire someone. That is one answer. It is not the only one. And it's not always the first one. Delegation has 3 forms, and you should be using all 3. The first one is delegate to systems. A compliance calendar that tracks every certification renewal, every report deadline, every comment window, and notifies you when something needs your attention. A proposal template library, that means you are not rewriting the same content from scratch. A pricing model that does not require you to recalculate from scratch every time. Those are systems. And we can leverage AI to create and build those systems. They do the work. They do work. They do not need a paycheck. The second thing, delegate to specialists. An attorney for your contract review, a CPA for your tax and PFS work, a proposal manager, even on a per engagement basis for your large captures. You could do a regulatory advisor for the brief you cannot read yourself every week. These are not employees. These are professional services you contract for. For a small firm, the right specialist on a narrow scope is often cheaper than a wrong employee on a broad scope. And then the third thing, delegate to people on your team. Yes, eventually, when the system and the specialist cannot absorb it, and the work is recurring enough to justify salary. But notice that this is the third option, not the first one. Most owners try to hire their way out of doing too much yourself before they have built the system and the specialist relationships. And they end up paying a salary for work that should have been a system or a service. And the last thing I want you to think about is what an owner should be doing. That's the last thing we're going to talk about. So here's a question that breaks the loop. What work, if you stop doing it tomorrow, would no one else in your business be able to do? That's the question. And that is your work. Everything else is delegable. For most owners in this room, that list is short. It is strategy. It is client relationship. at the executive level, not just all client relationships. It's client relationships at the executive level. It is the final read on the proposals before they go out. It is the decision on which contracts to actually pursue and which to walk away from. It is the people decision. That is the owner's work. Reading a 38-question survey market form, that can be drafted by a specialist and reviewed by you. You ain't got to do it. Filing the ISR, that is a system plus in admin. So I can get my system to do that. Get my admin, to make sure that it's right and send it in. Because again, what have I done? I've already got my SOP for it, right? Tracking the FAR overhaul comments deadline. That is a regulatory advisor or a calendar. Filing the comment itself, that is a specialist or a system with your sign off. You don't have to be the one to do the actual comment in and of itself. What specialist do you have that you've outsourced something to? What system? How do you have your system set up to respond, to information such as this? So you are not supposed to actually be doing all of this. You're supposed to be deciding which of this matters, who owns each piece, and whether it get done or whether it got done. That is what we're supposed to be doing. So a lot of the stuff that we do, it can be delegated to the system, a specialist, or a team. And we come in and only have a say in that part that only we can do. Everything else we can delegate. So if you want help reading the environment every week, so you stop being the one tracking all 8 of those items by yourself, again, I published a regulatory brief that walks through every one of them, plus deeper analysis and sources and action items I give my advisory clients. And it's the cheapest specialist delegation you can make, because it's free to subscribe. And so the link is in the chat and or in the show notes. Also, if you are trying to read every law firm summary and every federal register notice yourself, that brief is how you stop. Because again, I'm gathering information, tracking what's moving around under us, and providing, just some insight and some sources for your use. So already being done for free. And then if there's something in there that tweaks your interest, you can always go confer with the appropriate legal counsel or regulatory representative on your own. So before we close, I want you to pick one, drop it in the comments or with the hashtag delegate. Is it systems gap? You are doing work by hand that a calendar template, a library, or a tracker should be doing. Hashtag system gap. You're reading or interpreting something legal, financial, or regulatory that a professional service should be doing. I mean, that especially that first one, system gap. You're tracking, something that can a spreadsheet or something can track, or a template library. And the second one is a specialist gap where, hey, I need to be sending this out for someone else to review. Team gap. You have recurring work that justifies salary, but you have not hired anyone. And then the owner clarity gap. At the end of the day, you do not have a clear list of what only you can do. Because see, that's a problem, right? If we can't answer that first question, that's a problem. So everything feels like it has to come through us. So do I have an owner clarity gap? Do you know what is the one thing that only you can do? Or is there a list of things that only you can do? Everything, can't nobody else do it for your business in your business. Everything else, again, is delegable. And if it's none of the above, just say, hey, it's none of the above, because I have genuinely delegated and my business run without me in every seat. And so that's the honest approach to it all. I ask you to be honest across all of the questions, because the point is not to score well. The point is just to know which one is yours, and so we can work on it right here in the community. Again, that was just short and sweet, right? So again, if you have not already joined the SONRC's Facebook group, this is where the work continues between Wednesdays. So members are posting their stall diagnostic answers from last week, their halfway audit scores from the audit drop, and committing to their next move. And so this week, it's your hashtag delegate diagnostic. It goes right there too. So come share, come read what others are saying, and come find your accountability partner for the back half of this challenge. And come back next Wednesday at 2 p.m. For week 13, because next week we're going to be talking about you feel like you're making progress but not results. And I want you to bring your honest answers. Every time you show up to someplace, always be prepared to bring your honest answer to any question that is being asked of you. So here's what I want you to leave with on today. You did not build your business to do every job in it forever. You built your business so that eventually the business could do the work without you sitting at every chair. That eventually is now. The policy environment is not going to give you the slow runway to figure out delegation, especially in 2028. No, you need to know that now, right? The EDWSB audit is 6 days out. The FAR overhaul comments are 29 days out. The next quarter is going to require more attention than you have on more fronts than you can hold. So the owners who grow through the back half of 2026 are the ones who delegate this to systems, to specialists, and finally to teams in that order, and free their own time for the work only they can do. So you could be one of those owners. Show up next Wednesday, drop your delegate diagnostic in the group, and subscribe to the brief, and let's keep building. Again, this is Dr. Lori Smith, CEO and founder of Act Elegant LLC and Sowing Our Seeds Empowerment. And we will see you next Wednesday at 2 p.m. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye-bye.